This is question number 5, homework 4 for session 5, security evaluation. Jackson Timberlake, Wardle Cole just paid a dividend of $1.30 per share on its stock. Dividends are expected to grow at a compound rate of 4% per year indefinitely. Investors require a return of 14% on the company's stock. What is the current stock price? Pay attention to the rounding requirement. Do not round intermediate calculation and round your answer to two decimal places. So to get the current stock price, we know that the formula is simply that the price equals dividend 1, year 1, divided by the required return minus the growth rate of dividend. Notice here, let me put a 0 here just to denote that this actually means this is 0. So we are calculating the price at the current point, which is typically denoted by 0. And so this is D1 and continue. And we have D2 and we have, so this is 1, 2, 3. And we also have 3 and so on and so forth. So there's no maturity, so the dividends will continue forever, indefinitely. Notice here the numerator, the dividend, should be referring to the dividend of the next period relative to the time point that we are calculating the price. So the first question we can get easily. But one thing we need to pay attention to is going back to the setup. It says just paid a dividend of $1.30. So since this already happened and just happened, so first this cannot be D1, right? Because D1 means it's something which will happen in the future, right? One period later. So this statement just told us $1.30 cannot be D1. So it is actually D0, right? D0 is just what's paid here. So D0 equals $1.30. So then how do we get D1 from D0? Since dividend grows, right, grows at this rate of, going back to the setup, it says 4%, right, 4%. So dividend growth rate, that's small g, that means this is 4%. And R, this is 14%, right? So this is 4%, 14%. And D1, we know that since D grows at this G, so the relationship between D1 and D0 is simply that D1 equals D0 times 1 plus G, right? Because that D grows at this rate. And then, so that's our D1. So then we can divide this by R minus G. So the rest of the job is simply to plug in the numbers. So that equals $1.30 times 1 plus 4%, right? Divided by 14% minus 4%. So then we can just put everything into the Excel or calculator, whatever tool you want to use, and we can figure out the final answer pretty easily. So that's, let me use Excel, equals 1.30 times 1 plus 4%, and then divided by 14% minus 4%. So that gives me this automatically already kept only 2 decimal places. Otherwise, you just need to change the format in Excel to keep 2 decimal places. So we're getting $13. This is $13.52. So let me put that number back to connect. Now, so let's get to the second part of this question. What will the stock price be in 3 years? Again, the rounding requirement is do not round intermediate calculation and round your answer to 2 decimal places. By the way, the benefit of using Excel is that it automatically meets this do not round intermediate calculations requirement, because I didn't round any intermediate calculations when I get this 13.52 numbers. All right, so how do we get this? So now we need to get this P3, right? We need to get this P3 instead of P0. So what will the stock price be 3 years from now? So the formula will be similar, except that now we need to get the next period dividend. Now, since relative to 3, it should be 4, right? D4. So the formula should look something like P3 equals D4 divided by the same denominator as before. So the only thing that changes relative to the formula here is that for P0, it should be D1, but for P3, it should be D4, right? One period ahead, the dividend at that point. So then the question is, how do we get D4 from this D0? Since we know that the growth rate of dividend, right? So the relationship between D4 should be D3 and D4 should be D4 equals D3 times 1 plus D, right? And further, D3 equals what? D3 equals D2 times 1 plus D, right? And then we need to multiply this 1 plus D. So this will give us the square. And you can imagine if you further continue to substitute D2, that equals D1 times 1 plus D, and then times this 1 plus D squared, then you get cube. And finally, you can get to D0 times 1 plus D fourth power, right? So you can imagine, based on this, just observing this power and the number here, you can see that actually for any time, for any dividend, we can use this formula to get the value, right? T is any integer number which is stands for any time point in the future, right? Dt equals D0 times 1 plus G raised to the power of T. So in this case, D4 equals D0 times 1 plus G raised to the fourth power. So if you want to get D5, you just change the T to be 5. You can get the dividend for any number. And if you still recall, this is actually similar to what we did in session 3 around on the time value of money. This is like the future value, right? This is like the present value. And given the interest rate, the G here is like the interest rate. So this is the same formula as the future value formula, which we talk about in session 3. All right, so now given these numbers, we can now plug in, it's going to be 1 D0 times 1 plus G to the fourth power, and then R minus G. So now I can just plug in the number, right? Plug in the number, and then I can get, this is P3, right? Let me put this as just to not to confuse anyone. So this is P3. So the numerator will be 1.30 times 1 plus 4%, right? The growth rate of dividend, the small g, and raised to the power of 4, as we just talked about. And then the denominator is the same as before, which is r minus 14 minus 4%, right? So and then I need to change the format to keep only 2 decimal places. So this will give me 15.21, right? 15.21. So once you understand the second part of this question, you can also easily solve the third part, which is just changing the number of the number for the year, for the time period. So this is asking us to calculate the stock price in 12 years. So you can imagine the formula to get that is simply that T12, right? That will be D13, one period ahead, and then divided by R minus G. And since we already know the formula for the D, so we can use that formula. So this is D0 and then times 1 plus G, and then raised to the power of 13, and then divided by R minus G. So now I can plug in the numbers and get this P12. So this is equals 1.13 or 30, right? So that's D0 and then times 1 plus G, 4%, and raised to the power of 13, right? And then divided by 14% minus 4%, R minus G. So again, I need to change the format to keep only 2 decimal places. So this will give me 21.65, 21.65. So now let me check my work and see whether we got the right answer. I think we did. All right.